There we go. Excuse me. So again, welcome everyone. This is our first Monday Grief Speaker Series. Tonight we'll be talking a little bit about grief and the holidays. I'm glad that you chose to spend a little bit of your time with us today. I hope that you'll leave maybe with some new perspective or some new ideas that you might want to incorporate into your family's traditions and celebrations. The background behind me, as you can probably tell, is very Christmas oriented. My family celebrates Christmas, and so that's why I've got these decorations behind me. But we're certainly aware that not everyone in the Lost program celebrates Christmas. That's not everyone's holiday. And so I hope that the things that we talk about today will also be relevant for anniversaries, birthdays, all of those special occasions that we all need a little bit of help to get through sometimes. So again, thank you for coming, and we'll go ahead and get started. So the one thing I just wanted to say as we sort of kick off this conversation today, if you take, just a couple of things away today, that however you're feeling is valid and okay as you approach the holidays or special occasions. If you choose to maintain traditions or if you choose to change them altogether, also completely valid and okay. And that saying yes and saying no are both okay. If there are things that are presented to you that are helpful, say yes. If there are things that are presented to you that feel stressful and feel like a lot of work, and you just can't do them this year, saying no is also okay. And so I just want everyone to know that, part of the goal, especially when grief is very new and is very raw, it might just be to get through these days, not to have the best holiday you've ever had, but really just to get through as best you can. And sometimes that's enough. So just wanted to have everyone sort of keep that in mind, that if it feels a little bit different, that's okay. It's natural and what we expect. I see a couple people in here. Okay, there we go. All right. If I could get this back. There we go. Okay. So just starting off with talking about some special occasions. So these are some things that I often say in our groups, or I often say to my own clients. Just some things to sort of keep in mind. That holidays and special occasions are stressful and emotional, even when we're not grieving. And so holidays and special occasions often require work. They require planning, they require effort, energy, sometimes spending money, all things that can lead to some additional stress for us. And so the thought would be that if we're grieving, those things might just be even tougher and even more difficult for us, maybe making things feel a little bit heavier than they even would typically. Special occasions often involve expectations to do certain things or to feel a certain way. A lot of times our special occasions and our holidays revolve around rituals, things that we come to expect and to know year after year. So maybe we always go to grandma's house for Thanksgiving, and this year we can't do that. Or maybe, Aunt Lisa always brings the lasagna to our holiday party, and she's not here this year and she can't bring that. Or, we always order from, the same bakery, and we're not able to do that this year. So sometimes those expectations that we have shift and change after we lose a loved one. And that can feel really kind of disconcerting, a little harder for us to get our footing on these special days. Our holidays and special occasions are often social times, and times when we're expected to be together with our friends and with our family. And that social element is often particularly difficult for grieving people. Making small talk and making merry and, letting people know how glad you are to see them is a really difficult thing to do when you're really hurting and you're really sad. And so those are just some things that I certainly want to acknowledge. We often think of the holidays as, needing to be carefree and happy. And it can be hard to remember that we're also allowed to make space for some other emotions, for our sadness, for our longing for our loved one who's not here, maybe our anger or our disappointment that this is the way things look now, and that is isn't fair. So just remembering that, it's okay for us to make space for some of those things that are a little more difficult. So the next several slides are kind of titled the same thing. So preparing for the holidays when grieving. So again, these can also speak to our other special occasions, birthdays, anniversaries. And so some of these will be sort of more suggestions of just kind of things to think through. Some of them will be a little bit more concrete in terms of things that we can do. And so sort of bear with me as we go through some of these. So one thing that I always like to, just kind of help people prepare for is this increased anxiety or sadness that they may feel as these days approach. We talk a lot about that in our support groups when these big events come up, that often that sort of apprehension and that anxiety leading up to the day can be really, really difficult for us. It can be really debilitating in some ways, hard for us to make decisions, hard for us to sort of navigate the things that we're supposed to do or to make a plan. And so it's normal to feel, some of these bigger emotions as these big days come up. So just, it's okay to try to keep that in mind. One of the things that, I often think about this time of year, because I think it's something that impacts us without us always knowing, is that these next few weeks are our very shortest days of the year. So as we approach the beginning of the winter season, our daylight is so short. If we're going to work, right, we might not see daylight the entire day. We might arrive when it's still, the sun is just coming up, and we might leave after the sun sets. And so that's something that I always want people to keep in mind, that sort of sense of gloom and kind of darkness can really weigh on us too. It can really add to that the next point, the feeling of exhaustion we might have, or having less energy. Sometimes the days being shorter has a big impact on that also. I think that the talking about the energy, having less energy or being tired is something that's really important for us to acknowledge, especially when we think about how, birthdays, special events often require a lot of work and a lot of planning. And so if you're mentally exhausted, physically exhausted, those things just might be more difficult to do, more difficult to engage in. And so to give yourself some grace, show yourself some kindness, if that's something that you're going through. The person who you lost in your family or in your friend group, they may have been a really important part of special days and rituals. They may have been a central figure for your events, for your celebrations. It might have been the person who you really felt brought everyone and everything together for your holidays. They were the person who was really the planner, the person who was the welcomer, the person who invited everyone in. And so maybe that's something you feel that your family is sort of lacking this year. And that's, something to acknowledge, something to think about. It might be the person that you most looked forward to seeing at the holidays. Maybe it was the person that you enjoyed talking to the most and catching up with. Or it may even be a person you only saw at the holidays. We have many family members who maybe, live halfway across the country from one another. And these special events or birthdays or holidays might be the only time that we really had to spend with them. And so that absence is very, very noticeable when they're not there and when they can't celebrate with us. When we talk to parents and to grandparents, often sort of their thoughts and their concerns go to the children and the family, and how do we, keep things as normal as we possibly can? How do, we make sure that they're still having a good holiday, that they're not, feeling like they've been let down in some way because things have changed. And so I think what I would say to that is that, maintaining some routines and some rituals might be really important in your family. It might be something, that sort of keeps that sense of normalcy. It sort of keeps people going. Maybe it just sort of gives people an expectation of, well, this is what we do and we're going to keep doing it, and that's okay. But I think making space to sort of acknowledge difficult emotions or ambivalence can be, really important, to maybe even introduce new rituals or different ways to remember loved ones, which are all ways that children can get involved with these special events and can feel that they're really being included, and something that could be really healing for them. And so, sort of thinking about how do we bring remembrance activities into these events is something to really think about. And feeling pressure to put on a happy face to see friends or to see family. So the social obligations, as I talked about a little bit before, of the holidays can just be really exhausting and sometimes are just not appealing to people. The idea of wanting to see people who, haven't experienced what you've experienced, who aren't having these same difficult emotions to get through, can feel like things are a little bit worse, or maybe that it's even kind of in your face a little bit that other people are celebrating and are really happy, and you're just not there. And that can be a really difficult thing. And so if it's sort of feeling like that social obligation is more of a chore than it is a blessing to see folks, it's another one of those places where maybe we change things up, or maybe we say no, and we just sort of give ourselves permission for that. The thing I was sort of thinking about is, it's really okay for you to feel how you feel and to be honest about that. And I think sometimes we worry that maybe we're going to ruin someone else's good time. Maybe we're going to, bring down the holiday if we're honest about things. And I think my opinion about that is that it means that their experience was probably pretty fragile to begin with. If they can't handle us giving them a very honest show of emotion that we're missing our loved one, that we're grieving and we're having a hard time, because that's the truth and that's what we're experiencing. And it's okay for us to make space for that. So if you've been to our support groups, either in person or online, you have probably heard us talk a lot about this first bullet point, which is to try to have a plan of some sort so that you're not caught off guard. So this is true for birthdays, for anniversaries, for special occasions of all kinds. And even if you don't follow the plan, that's absolutely okay. The idea is really just to kind of, get it into your brain, get used to thinking about, okay, this day is coming, this is coming up, and what do I sort of want to have in place for myself that maybe will help me get through a little bit better. And so if all of those plans, fall through, if we don't do any of them, that's okay. I think that there's still a lot of benefit in the process of that, of sort of thinking things through and thinking through what you might want to do. Last year, when we were talking through this presentation and the second bullet point about creating a checklist, I actually had one and I cannot find it. So I wanted to provide it for folks, but it has disappeared from the internet and I could not find it. But the checklist was really about how do we delegate responsibility? What are the different things that we do at the holidays or that we do on these special occasions, and who can do them and when do they need to be done? One of the things that we sometimes talk about, particularly with traumatic grief, which is something all of us who've experienced the loss to suicide have experienced traumatic grief, is an impact on our executive functioning. So our ability to plan and to have forethought and to organize, and to sort of, just kind of think through things that need to be done. And that can really, really be impacted by our grief. And so having a checklist, actually getting it out of our minds and maybe onto some paper, can help us recognize all of the different things that we do during these special occasions, and can really help us to sort of figure out, oh, okay, well, Aunt Linda, she's going to do the food. We're going to have a potluck this year. Who's going to bring the decorations up from the basement, right? Whatever that looks like, to just kind of have those all out there for you, in a way to sort of, remember what needs to be done. And if our brain isn't sort of turning that on automatically in the way that it typically does. Excuse me, and take a little drink here. We certainly encourage folks to find some additional support. So if you are particularly having a difficult time this month, in between the Thanksgiving and the Christmas holidays, for example, or even as we enter the new year. Sometimes the new year is really difficult for a lot of our folks thinking. So if you had your loss just this year in 2022, knowing that you're entering a year and your loved one is not, that can be a really difficult thing, and something that other people in our group certainly understand and have also needed to work through. And so we certainly encourage you to reach out to others. We have, if you've been getting our newsletters, and I hope everybody has, you'll see that several of our groups have returned to offering in-person support. So if you are local to any of those groups, you are certainly very welcome to join us at an in-person group. Our online support groups are also continuing, and we have several of those scheduled throughout the month of December. So of course, you would be very welcome at any of those. And I also, excuse me, we'll put in a plug here for the Alliance of Hope Forum. So the Alliance of Hope Forum is an online support forum, an online discussion forum where people can really post about what is coming up for them in their grief, things that maybe they're looking for support with. And you can also read about the experiences of others. And what I think is so helpful about the Alliance of Hope is that it's always open and it's always there. So 24 hours a day, if you wake up at 3 a.m. and you're having a difficult time, you can always go on there and read a survivor story, and sort of, maybe hear from someone else about what was helpful for them. Or you can post a question, and others will get back to you and let you know, yeah, I've been through that too, or this is how we sort of got through that. So it's always an option for you. If you Google it, you'll be able to find it pretty easily, and that can also just be another good resource. And then I think that this last bullet point is something that's it's important to remember, but I think also sort of difficult to put into practice sometimes, which is to choose, communicate, and compromise. So this is really more about maybe within yourself, or even, within your own family, choosing. So what are the things that we want to do or need to do? What are the things we can choose to leave out this year? What are the things that are just going to, take extra effort and energy that maybe we just don't have? And we're just going to choose to not participate in that, or to leave that behind this year. So maybe we don't need to put up stockings, or maybe, we're going to get takeout this year instead of trying to cook a big meal for everybody. And that's just something that we can sort of choose. The communicate part, I think, is sometimes particularly difficult, as I know a lot of our lost members are caregivers. They're people who really do a good job of taking care of other people, meeting the needs of other people. And so communicating our own needs, the things that we want, or the things that feel good for us or don't feel good for us, can sometimes be really difficult. And so I certainly encourage everyone to have, have a little bit of courage to talk about those things, to just say, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I need, and let people know what you're thinking, and let them help you kind of get through it if you're able to. And I think the compromise piece is really important. So, there might be, I'm thinking of an example, right? Like if you're in a couple and maybe you've lost your really good friend, maybe, your significant other is thinking, well, of course, we're still going to go to all of these holiday parties. Of course, we're still going to do this. And internally you're thinking, there's just no way. I can't do that. And so maybe we have a compromise where, you know what, we're going to go to our friends holiday gathering, but we're not going to go to your work holiday party because that takes too much energy and too much effort for me. And sort of compromising on that. I'm not saying no to everything, but I'm letting you know that I can handle a little bit less than I could in years past. My capacity is a little bit different for dealing with these things than perhaps it was in years past. And so communicating about that and sort of figuring out our own needs. I know I'm saying that very casually, but I also know that can be a difficult thing to do. So try to respect your own needs for the holiday. Give yourself permission for things to look different. I remember, and I haven't talked much about my story yet tonight, but I will here in just a few minutes. But I first came to the Lost program in 2014 after losing my older brother Joel to suicide. And one of the things that I remember is as we approached the holidays, I think that there was a lot of fear there. I think there was a lot of apprehension, really not sure what that was gonna feel like, and if it was something we even wanted to do. And I remember just having these conversations of, well, maybe we should just all go to Mexico and we should just be on a beach and we should just do things completely differently. We didn't do that. We actually, stuck to most of our traditions and tried to get through them as best we can. But I think that our speaking about that, that maybe we wanted to do something a little bit different was just a sort of an honest way of us saying we're really hurting. And the idea of everything looking the same as it always did feels hurtful. And that's a really difficult thing for us. The idea of creating new rituals or finding ways to incorporate your loved one into existing rituals. So if you received our November and December obelisk, this is really what Father Ruby wrote about in his article in this edition. So he really was speaking about how do we incorporate our loved one into new traditions? How do we bring them with us? And how do we incorporate these opportunities for memory, for remembrance? And, I'm sure many of you have heard Father Ruby say this, that, an additional tragedy to losing our loved ones would be if they were forgotten or if they weren't included. And I think that the holidays and special occasions are a really good opportunity for us to do that, to find meaningful ways to incorporate their memory, and to make sure that we are keeping them with us in our celebrations, that we're acknowledging, the gifts that they gave us, the things that we miss about them, the things that we loved about them, and just finding ways to share our own memories, even though we're grieving, which is, again, a difficult thing to do, but certainly a possible thing to do, and something I think can be really healing. If you have children in your family, maybe you have children or grandchildren, communicate with them honestly. Things might feel a bit different. They might be a little bit sad, but that reassurance that we're going to get through that together can just be really powerful for children. Sort of modeling for them that, I am having a bit of a hard time this year, that this feels a little bit different for me. Sometimes gives children permission to be honest with you and to let you know how they're feeling. One of the things I always think is so interesting about children's experiences, and I've learned so much from my wonderful colleague Cindy, who I know is here, who works with our kiddos in the program, is that children can just really surprise you. Sometimes they are the one who is really leading, this effort in the family of, say they lost their older brother, and they're like, well, what do you mean we're not going to put their stocking out? Their stocking needs to be out. Like, we need to put that up with the rest of our stockings. Or maybe they're going to be the first person to openly communicate a family memory, something that they remember about the person who was lost, who we lost this year. And they can really sort of model that for us in some ways, that it's okay to talk about them and it's okay to include them. On the other hand, sometimes children are very quiet. Sometimes they may be withdrawn. They might seem less like they're not participating as much with us, right? That's also a typical grief response. There's no, right or wrong way for children to react on these days either. But I think that encouragement and reassurance that, we're in this together, and that whatever you're feeling is okay, because I'm feeling a lot of big emotions too. It's just very honest. And I think children and adolescents really pick up on our honesty. And I think that they really value that. This last bullet point, I often, I have to think about my mother when I talk about this. So if you're used to being in charge, maybe try to delegate or let others help. So my mom is very much our holiday and special occasion matriarch in our family. So she's really the person who gets us all together, makes sure that we all have something to eat and we all have something to open under the tree. She's really, really wonderful about that. And one of the things that I've come to learn about my mom is that being in charge is actually in some ways really healing for her. Having something to do, having tasks, and sort of knowing that there's this routine and things that I need to do offers her really good distraction in some ways from her grief. On the other hand, if she were to tell us, I just can't do any of this anymore, that would also be totally fine. And we would delegate the tasks as best we can, and we would try to pick up the slack in any way we needed to. So all that to say, if it's something that is healing for you, if that distraction is helpful, then great, that's okay. And if it's something that is really just too much and it's too difficult, it's okay to say no. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to delegate tasks. It's okay to leave things behind if we need to. And I think this also goes hand in hand when we talk about our energy level and how that's impacted by our grief. Maybe we just can't do it this year, and that's okay. Or maybe this is the place where I really want to put the energy that I have. And that's absolutely okay too. All right. So these next few slides that I'm going to go through, I'm mostly just going to sort of read them because the print is a little small. So I'm not sure if everybody will be able to see them. But these were taken from, again, our most recent version or edition of the Obelisk. So one of our lost members, Jack, wrote our lead article for this last edition. And he's a lost member. He lost his son. And I just really liked the suggestions that he offered around the holidays. And honestly, I thought he said it more articulately than I can. And so I'm going to share his words with all of you, and just know that these come from Jack, a fellow griever, and someone who's certainly been there. But we can sort of go through those together. Well, if my slide will change, or it won't. There we go. Okay, so he says, talk among your immediate family before the event about how you are all feeling and what you're up to. Don't let anyone push you to go to an event that you are not ready for. Not everyone has to attend. Do what you think will give you the most strength and energy for these events that may be different from what people tell you or might be pushing you to do. Only you truly know what you are up to doing for these events. And maybe you don't even know, and you got to give it a try, and that's okay too. Often it helps to have a friend in the room that you can speak honestly with prior to the gathering. Your trusted ally can help get you out of conversations you feel uncomfortable with, and they can chat with folks prior to your arrival. They can be your wingman for the day and keep an active eye out for you and provide you added strength and support you might need. Sometimes that actually is a friend, like in a friend group. It's something I work with a lot of young adults, and often this is something I encourage them to do if they need to go to a social outing, to really have an ally with them, someone who can advocate for them, someone who, can give their hand a squeeze if they're, sort of sensing that something is a little bit difficult, and just kind of knowing, okay, there's someone there who knows and someone there who can help me, and I don't have to feel quite so alone with all of this. You don't have to do the same activity as you have done in years past. In fact, trying to do the same event without the missing person may only make things worse. You can do something different. Have a Thanksgiving breakfast, just have desserts, have a coffee tasting, go out to a restaurant, take out all of your photos and leave them around for people to talk about. Ask people to bring stories or videos of photos of your loved one to share with the group, or stay home and have a quiet day. So I love all of these suggestions of just, changing it up a little bit, maybe to take a little bit of stress off, maybe to sort of change those expectations that we feel every year, to sort of lighten the load a little bit. And I particularly love the suggestion of having photos of your loved one for people to talk and to share memories. One of our facilitators for the group that I facilitate, he often talks about how he and his wife have really tried to speak very honestly and very openly about their son in a way that really encourages the people around them to also speak about their son, to share memories of him, to share things that they miss. And that's been really, really healing for them. So if it's something that you're able to do, we can model that for our family members too, and can say, it's really helpful for me to talk. And so I would love to hear a memory that you have, or I would love to hear, that story of that funny thing that happened 10 years ago, right? Whatever that is, that those can be really healing. For a few years, we shifted to just stopping in on family and friends for coffee and dessert after the event was mostly over. It allowed us to see everyone, but not feel the pressure to stay the whole time. Folks just want to see how you are doing. So I also really like that I know this is probably true for a lot of families. Sometimes special occasions turn into marathon events. They last all day. There are people in and out the whole time. You're socializing, and it can take a lot of your energy. And I think, being able to show up, but to set your own sort of expectations and boundaries for that, your own timeline, can also be a really healing thing. Remember, it's only 24 hours. Most survivors start thinking and worrying about the events long in advance. Be kind to yourself and know that you will wake up the next day and the sun will rise again. So I think that those, we talked a little bit about that a few minutes ago, about how sometimes the lead up to these events is even more stressful than the event themselves. And I think that's really what this is speaking to, is that anxiety can last a really long time. But these special events, these holidays, have a finite amount of time. They're one day. And so just to remember that you will get through, that there will be a day after, and that, that's okay. It's also a good idea to have a plan B. With great intentions, you decide in advance that you might participate in an activity, but when you wake up or when you go to drive to the event, you just don't have the strength to follow through with your original plans. That's when you shift to plan B. It's not a failure. It is just a different choice for the day. It might be something as simple as a walk in the park, stopping by a house of worship, or visiting someplace that gives you strength and happiness. People understand that you are grieving, and they will understand that you might need a change of plans for the day. And so this is sort of what we talked about a little bit earlier, about having a plan, and that it's okay if it shifts. It's okay if we don't follow through with it, because really it is all about supporting yourself as best you can, doing the things that feel as helpful, and instead of the things that maybe feel like too much work or too much stress. Avoid hosting the event at your home. That way, if you suddenly feel overwhelmed, it's hard to disappear. If you need a quiet moment, consider letting someone else host this year, because you deserve a break. So that's one of those things where if the tradition in your family, it looks one way and you're trying to change it up, that might feel a little scary. It might feel a little intimidating to even communicate that to your family members. But it's absolutely okay for you not to take on the stress and the workload of that. One of the things that I think also sort of goes along with that is that we sometimes talk about, if you are going to a holiday, and I know some of our facilitators who are here will talk about this too, make sure that you drive yourself and maybe park a little further away, so that if you're feeling overwhelmed, you can quietly sort of exit, and you can head home. You don't need to worry about anyone parking you in, because you have the forethought to park a little further away. It kind of gives you a little bit more power, I think, and a sense of security, that if you're a little panicked or if you're overwhelmed, that you can remove yourself from the situation, take a break, do what you need to do. Just some of those kind of practical ideas. Some families like to do a more formal recognition of the person who is missing around the table. I've heard a lot of people going around the table asking each person to tell a short, positive, funny memory about the person who is missing. So I think that sort of goes hand in hand sometimes with sharing those photographs that we talked about a couple of slides ago. And that it can just be really healing to give people permission to talk about our loved ones. That sometimes when we're grieving, and you've probably heard us talk about in group this idea of balanced memories, how sometimes all we can remember are the really, really fun, happy things, and sometimes all we can remember are the really, really upsetting things and our sadness. And I think when we open up that conversation to other people, it really gives us a lot more perspective, and it can kind of help to balance those memories a little bit more. So if we're, sort of stuck in this place of just being really sad and just thinking about the really difficult times, a family member or a friend sharing a memory that they have can really help to lighten our spirits in that way. Some folks even set a place at the table for the missing person and place a picture or candle on their plate. There's a candle lighting ceremony. I think that was linked in there. I should have taken that part out, but we have a couple through the Lost program also that we do. But I think that this idea of really creating space for your loved one and holding space for them can also be really, really special, to not, not kind of gloss over the fact that they're not here, but to really acknowledge this absence, that they aren't here with us. It can just be a really, really powerful piece too. Some people use the event as a way to let people around them know in advance how they're doing. You could send an email out to folks in advance of the event, share how you are doing, that it is okay to talk about your missing loved one, tell them some of the things that you need to get through the coming event. Remember, they are clueless about what you're going through unless you help to educate them. Jack, when he comes to our group, is always very good to remind people about that most people are not trying to be hurtful. They're not trying to, be insensitive to us. They just don't get it. They just haven't been through it, and they just don't really know how to help. And so they're more clueless than anything. But this is an opportunity to rekindle deep friendships you have, let the helpers back into your life. So that's something that can be, difficult in grief, is letting people in. And when we can be upfront and honest about our feelings, about our experiences, let other people offer us some care and some support, that can be really helpful. Excuse me. And I think that this last bullet point is actually it's really important. And it's something, there was a presentation earlier today that my colleague Jessica did, and she was talking a lot about this too, just about, when people are grieving, often, turning to substances is something that a lot of people do, but that sometimes it can make these special events and these occasions even more difficult. So if you're able to avoid alcohol, able to sort of, stay as sharp as you can so that you can manage your emotions, that might be a good thing. I know that alcohol is an important part of a lot of people's family celebrations. It's definitely a norm in a lot of households, and in a lot of families and a lot of friend groups. And so maybe abstaining from that feels bad, or, feels tricky in some way. But just remember that this is about you and about what's going to make you feel better, or about what's going to sort of aid in your healing. And that's really the most important piece. But again, I know that that's difficult in some families that really have more of a culture around that. It might feel a little bit more difficult, or it may be the main way that you've been coping. So just something to sort of keep in mind. Okay. So moving right along here. So this is where I'm going to start to sort of talk a little bit about some various suggestions, rituals, things that people either in the Lost program have done, or that people, excuse me, in articles that I've read have talked about as being helpful. Oops, sorry. Oh, and that's perfect timing, because I see Yvonne is just logging on. And so I'm going to ask Yvonne and Lori if you'll stand by for me for a second, because I am going to ask you to share here in just a few minutes, if you would. So stand by. But these are just a couple of things that I just wanted to speak about. So a special tree for your loved one, that is from an article that I read last year, that was about a mother who lost her son. And what she spoke about in this article was that she has a special tree that is just for him. And so on this special Christmas tree, she puts all of his ornaments, all of the ones that maybe he made in preschool or in grade school, or the ones that say his name. And it's really her kind of memorial tree for him. And it's something that she typically does on her own. She usually chooses to decorate the tree by herself as a way to, sort of have that special time of remembering her son and really honoring him. And I just thought that was really a lovely thing. I think in a lot of families, we've got a lot of those memories around the holidays. I know that's true in my family. There's always ornaments that my brother made. I know that there's a couple with our photos on them or handprints or whatever that looks like. And so I think that's just a really special thing. Acts of service and helping others. We have a lot of people in the loss program, and you've probably heard our clinicians talk about this concept of meaning making through grief. Something that can be really, really healing for us is to find meaning as we move forward in our healing. And for a lot of people, that comes in the way of acts of service, wanting to give back to others, wanting to be helpful for other people who are maybe in need. And so that takes a lot of different paths. We've had people who have done, clothing and personal care drives for people who are experiencing homelessness. We've had people who have done coat drives or clothing drives, people who volunteer at different places. So there are all sorts of ways I think that people give back and help others during these special occasions or holidays in a way that really aids in their own healing. A couple of years ago, in the Obelisk, one of our articles was about a woman who lost a good friend. And what she talks about was that her friend really loved elephants. And so at the holidays, she buys things that are related to elephants and she'll donate them to toy drives or those sorts of things. We've had a lot of people in years past, we've had toy drives at our Evening of Remembrance. And often what people bring in are toys or items that remind them of their loved one. That is something that was really, really special for the person that they lost, that they now want to bring happiness to somebody else who might really enjoy that toy or that item or whatever that is. So again, I think that those are just really beautiful ways of just acknowledging our loss, but also sort of paying it forward in a very kind way that honors the memory of our loved ones. Making room for sadness and grief. I'll just tell a brief story about this in my own family. Is our first Christmas after losing my brother. I was just having a really hard time. And so I just needed to take myself out into a different room and have myself a little cry. And what was so special about that is that a couple of my cousins came in and found me, and they just kind of joined in and just kind of had a little cry too. And it was really, really meaningful to me. Of course, I don't want anyone I love to be grieving and sad either, but to see them really making room for their own sadness and grief about my brother was just so meaningful to me, to know that they were impacted by it too, that they were thinking of him, that they were missing him, that it wasn't just me, was just really, really special. We talk a lot about tossing old rituals, making new ones, and all of that is okay. I know that there are a lot of people who try really hard to just sort of maintain what they can maintain. And a lot of people who are like, nope, we're going to build it all back up because this has just kind of come crashing down on us. And so I'll give a couple of just examples of that from my own family. So again, as I mentioned, I lost my older brother in 2014. He was, and I often describe him as my first and best friend. He was just incredibly important to me, and we were very close. And so until the year he died, I had never had a Christmas morning without my brother. I was 26 when he died. He was 28. And so for, a quarter of a century, that was my memory, was waking up on Christmas morning with my brother. And he, my brother really struggled for a long time with his own mental health. But the one thing that never failed was my brother's cheerfulness and gratitude around the holidays. He was the person you wanted to buy presents for because it didn't matter what it was. He was so grateful. He was so happy. After every time he opened something, he stood up and went to hug the person, who gave him the gift before he moved on to the next one. He was just really, really just grateful. He was just so happy to be with us and to be, with our family. And so that first Christmas, I just really missed him, and I've missed him every Christmas since. We've really found, some ways to incorporate him in our rituals and in our memories. So if you see my tiny little Christmas tree in my little apartment back here, I have a Joel, his name is Joel. I have a Joel ornament on my tree that I actually made at a Survivor Day event. I think either the first or the second year after he died. And we have Joel ornaments on our tree at home. I have a little snowman mug with his name on it that I drink my coffee in, usually in December. So just, finding ways to really remember him and incorporate his memory. And then every year before coming to Catholic Charities, I worked for Jewish Child and Family Services. And although my family is not Jewish, as you can tell from the Christmas tree, one of the things that really was meaningful to me was this idea of yahrzeit and remembrance of people who have died. And so we light a candle for my brother every year. It's a candle that's meant to burn for 48 hours. We light it on Christmas Eve, and we put it by a really lovely picture of my brother that's in this cute little holiday frame. And it's our little Joel corner. It's a place where, we can go and have a little private moment with him if we want to. We can, share a memory. We can say hello to him. And as I was talking about this with my mom today to make sure we still had a candle in stock somewhere, she said, yep. And this year, I think we'll put a picture of Riley there too, which is my brother's dog, who we lost back in the spring, which was another loss for us. To lose another piece of my brother was really, really hard. And so we like to think that, they're together, that they've been reunited, and that they're doing okay. So I think we'll probably put a little picture of Riley up there too. And so those are just, some examples of the things that we do here in our family. And just kind of finding ways to acknowledge my brother and to, acknowledge our loss. And then we're going to move forward here. I can. Okay. Oops. Went too far. So at this time, I would also just love to hear from some folks who might be willing to share a little bit about their own experiences, talking about what helps or what they've tried. So I know that I've got Yvonne and Lori here who have both very graciously said that they would be willing to share. So I'm wondering, maybe Yvonne, would you maybe start for us and go ahead and unmute and go ahead and share. And I'm going to spotlight you. So hold on a second.
Okay, sounds good.
There we go. Okay, thanks, Yvonne.
Hi there. Thank you, Emily. And thank you to everybody that have joined us here today to talk about the holidays. It is a tough time. I did lose my husband, Jerry, of 21 years, and I just celebrated his 10th year anniversary. So it is rough, and it's right around the holidays. It's right around Christmas, and also our wedding anniversary. Our big holiday that Jerry and I used to have together for his family was Thanksgiving. And basically we do exactly what Emily does. Now that Jerry's gone, we do put a picture up of him on the table, on the side table, usually near the desserts, with a candle. And he loved birch trees. So Yankee Candle makes a silver birch candle that I usually buy, and we usually light it. And again, I do tell stories about Jerry because a lot of times people are uncomfortable, family members and friends are uncomfortable to even start talking about your loved one because they don't want to hurt you. So give permission to start talking about him. So usually it's like, oh, Jerry loved, green bean casserole, and he loved blueberry pie and things like that. And it gives everybody an okay that we can talk about him. And that's what just keeps him alive, just talking. And oh, do you talking about fun things that happened, years ago, like, oh, remember when, your loved one did something, or, oh, he hates yams, or, it's just nice for you to just keep his memory alive. So, I mean, it's just really, really important. And to get through the holidays is just having that memory. And also just be patient with yourself, not fulfilling those expectations. You do what you are comfortable with. It's okay. So thank you. And thank you, Emily.
Oops. There we go. Thank you so much, Yvonne. I really appreciate you sharing. Yvonne is one of our group facilitators, and so I know that she certainly understands what all of us are talking about. And we've been really lucky that she has been offering her support and wisdom the past several years to our grievers. So thank you so much for sharing, Yvonne. I really appreciate it. Lori, are you on? I can. Let's see.
Yes.
There she is. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and spotlight you too, so that we can hear you. There we go. Oh, and you're going to have to say what that beautiful thing is in your background, because whatever it is, I love it.
Thank you. So, hi, everyone. So I lost my son, Edward, 10 years ago through suicide. And then 3 years later, his older brother, William, died of a accidental drug overdose. So much of what Emily said has really resonates with me. When you said, Emily, first that the holidays can be stressful, of course, without a loss. And that's what it was like for the few years before my son's deaths, is one of my sons had an eating disorder, and another one had an alcohol use disorder. And so times of holidays when you had extra food and drink and everything were stressful while they were alive. So I think about that when the holidays come, what it was like when we still had them. And what we do now is try to keep things simple and low key. And that's worked for us. We get together with family really more during Thanksgiving. And that is kind of easier because it's not a gift giving occasion. And we do celebrate with special foods, but without alcohol anymore. But when Christmas comes, it's just my husband and me and our remaining daughter. And another thing we would do when we had 3 children is try to get them something really special and significant for Christmas. But another thing we changed is that we don't go for like a big gift at Christmas anymore. And because we actually like this, which is Advent calendars, which can be so pretty. So we kind of decorate in a different way. We've got a bunch of different Advent calendars. And the whole idea about giving something little every day from December 1st to 24th, that's what we did to change it up, to have a different kind of celebration. So I get 2 gifts, one for my husband, one for my daughter every day, and they do the same. And we share those every day from December 1 to Christmas. And so what we've done is what Emily mentioned, changing things up, having new traditions, getting rid of old traditions and starting something new. And for people for whom this loss is new and so very raw, you can try things that actually work for you, and then you learn from that. Because initially we just thought we would not be in our house. We actually went downtown to stay in a hotel and thought that would be different, but it didn't feel good to us. maybe that would work for some others. It just was one of the things that didn't work for us. So I guess try to allow that maybe the first or second thing you try might not work, and then you're going to try something else that maybe will work. And so that's what we have done. So I hope that that could be helpful to somebody else. And like we always say, I'm just so sorry why we're here, why you're here. It's just good sometimes to be with other people who know what it's like, what you've been through. And that's what the loss program has been for me, to know that I'm with other people who have experienced the same kind of tragic loss. So I wish you all well for the holidays. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Lori. And I just happen to know Lori's daughter very well, and she was already telling me how excited she was that December was here, and that she, had already started exchanging gifts with her parents. And so I know how meaningful that's become for her. So thank you so much, Lori. I really appreciate it. I don't know if there's at this time, if anyone else has something they would like to share, please feel free. You can unmute yourself. I don't know if Sandy, our facilitator, is on here, but if she is or if she isn't, I wonder if she would mind if I shared something that she shared in a meeting. Because I was actually just talking about it with my mom. And one of the things that she talks about is she lost her son, and that at Thanksgiving, they have a blank tablecloth that they used, and that they started this tradition where they would trace their hands and they would write what they were grateful for on the tablecloth as a way of sort of remembrance, and also just, what are we thankful for? What are we thinking of? And they've filled the tablecloth up, and they've started a new one. And there's something about that I just love. It's so simple, but it's also just so meaningful, and it gives everyone an opportunity to participate. It's something that children can do. It's something that adults can do. And it's also this tangible thing then, that you then have and you can look back on in the memories. And I just think that's really special. And I meant to tell my mom that before Thanksgiving, but I forgot. So I'm hoping maybe we can do something similar next year when we get together, because I just thought that was so special. Oh, okay, Sandy, she wrote me in the chat. They're on their third cloth this year. Sandy, I hope you don't mind that I shared that, because it really is just something that I loved hearing about that tradition. And I just really think that it's something that so many people could probably incorporate in their families. And especially, when we're talking about Thanksgiving into Christmas and thinking about what we're grateful for, or the things that bring us joy. I just really appreciated that. So thanks for letting me share that, Sandy. Thank you. Would anyone else like to share, or if you have, something even that maybe you're worried about or feeling a little anxious about, you could put it in the chat. There's some seasoned folks here who I know would be very, very willing to give you some wisdom or some encouragement to get through your own difficult days. And so I'll just wait a minute to see if anybody has anything to share. And if not, we'll move on to our closing ritual.
I can share, Emily.
Oh, hi, Jean. Thanks so much.
So I lost my ex-husband, Ed, 20 years ago. We had two sons together. They were 15 and 12 at the time. And then he was remarried and had little ones, a 5-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. So that first Christmas, we of course wanted, his wife and I wanted to maybe make it kind of the same for the kids. And they always spent Christmas Eve with Ed's family. So I went along on that trip. It was very uncomfortable because Ed and I had been had not been together for 9 years. So some of the people that I saw on that Christmas Eve were not, I hadn't seen in 9 years. But I felt it was important for my boys that I be there. And then and then my boys would spend the night with their dad and their stepmom and their little brother and sister, which they did. And then the next morning, I went over to their house for breakfast. So we started that tradition of Christmas morning. I would go to Trisha's and we would have breakfast with all 4 of the kids, which worked. It was wonderful. It was sad, of course. I do remember the first year, Trisha and I were getting breakfast on the table and she had Christmas carols playing on the radio. And the Christmas carol about the chestnuts roasting on an open fire. That's what I call the title of the song, but I know that's not it. But it came on the radio while we were in the kitchen, and we were both just in tears because that was Ed's favorite Christmas carol. I of course, every time I hear that song, I think of Ed because it was his favorite Christmas carol. So that was our tradition. Trish got remarried and moved away, and my boys are in their 30s now. So we don't do that anymore, but it was really a nice way to spend Christmas morning for 4 or 5 years. And I know that this has been said more than once in this presentation, but you need to do I don't want to tell everybody what to do, but do what's best for you. Do what works for you. Don't worry about other people's expectations. You have to take care of yourself. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jean. I really appreciate that. And such a really good reminder for us. And also, I love that because it was something that, even though at first you were like, oh, this might make me a little uncomfortable. Look how it worked out and how meaningful that was for all of you, to come together. We talk a lot about the courage it takes to grieve, which I think is just really, really true. And when we make choices like that and we can see the healing that comes from that, I think that's so powerful. So thank you so much. Thank you. All right. Anybody else who would like to share? Of course, no pressure. I just want to give folks the opportunity if there's anything else anyone would like to speak about today. And if not, we will go ahead and do our little ritual. And I will again sort of remind folks we are here for you. So if you are looking for a group opportunity, if you are looking for, I just need something to read, that's going to sort of like give me a little distraction, send us an email, give us a call. We'd be happy to, invite you to any of our groups that we have going on this month. I know our facilitators are so wonderful at welcoming in new folks. No matter if your loss is a month ago or 10 years ago, it's never too late to come to our groups to find some healing and some support. So I certainly encourage each of you to do what you need to do. And I appreciate that reminder from Jean that it really is about what you need to do to get through. And that's why I like to reiterate that it's not about making this the very best holiday season ever. It's really about getting through as best you can and the way that feels best for you. Okay, so I think that we'll go ahead then and we are going to do one of our rituals. We have a few of them that we use in the Lost program. So if you come to one of our December meetings, you might do this one or you might do another one. And so if you if you want to, again, have a photo of I'm looking over here because this is where all my family pictures are. I've got a huge display of them. So my brother is over here several times. So I've always got a photo of him nearby. But I'm going to go ahead and pull up I'm going to switch my share here a second. And then if you guys are willing to respond along with me, I'd really appreciate it. If you want to unmute your microphone, you are very welcome to do so. And we'll sort of go through this together as we sort of close out the evening today. So this is We Remember Them. So I'm just going to go ahead and read. And then if you'd like to respond, we remember them, please feel free. So, at the rising sun and at its going down,
We remember
Remember
them.
them.
at the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter,
We
Remember them.
at the opening of the buds and in the rebirth of spring,
We remember them.
Remember them.
at the blueness of the skies and in the warmth of summer,
We remember them.
Remember
them.
at the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of autumn,
We remember
Remember
them.
them.
at the beginning of the year and when it ends,
We
We
remember
remember
them.
them.
We remember them.
when we are weary
We
and
remember
in need
them.
of strength,
We
remember
remember them.
Remember them.
when we are lost and sick at heart,
We remember
We
them.
remember
them.
We remember them.
when we have decisions that are difficult to make,
We
remember
them.
Remember them.
when we have joy we crave to share,
We remember them.
when we have
We
achievements
remember
that are
them.
based on theirs,
We remember
Remember
them.
them.
We remember them.
and for as long as we live, they too will live, for they are now a part of us. As
We
we remember.
remember them.
We remember them.
So thank you all so much for being here
We
with
remember
us
them.
today. And for participating in our remembrance ritual. I know that sometimes it, even after 8 years, I still get tearful when we do these. I think that they're just so memorable or meaningful. But I just want each of you to know that we will be keeping you in our thoughts and our prayers and in our hearts during this season and always. So please do reach out to us if we can offer you any additional support. We certainly encourage you to attend one of our support groups and know that you can get through, and you will. And we are really grateful for all of our members. And we'll be thinking of you and really wishing you well. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.